My name is Rob Pritchard. I've been a part of this neighborhood since '83.
In the 1980s, Rob Pritchard was a star in Troma Horror films, most notably playing the classical high school bully in 1984's Toxic Avenger.
Slog, there's that thing again! Can't get him off the crosswalk!
By the 1990s, he founded Serve Reality, a legendary theatre in the Lower East Side.
When I first moved into this building, this was the entrance to a brothel. It was a Russian brothel.
Along with fellow art stars, Faceboy and Rev Gen, he led the Dance Liberation Front, a protest group in response to Giuliani's decision to dust off the archaic cabaret laws that unfairly targeted the city's nightlife.
Money-grubbing cabaret laws.
We had sort of pretended as the Dance Liberation Front that we were like a faux terrorist organization. Like we had our list of unnegotiable demands, and we would show up with bandanas, you know, like covering our faces like Sandinistas.
I mean, this would never fly. We would all have been plunged with a million bullets if we tried to do it in this day and age.
But then after 9/11, no more Osama bin Travolta.
By the early 2000s, he was priced out of the neighbourhood by what he calls the War of the Worlds.
The day I was evicted was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life.
And so we were seeing the whole, the culture change, right before our very eyes through gentrification.
One of his last final acts was the East Village Safari, a 2004 experiential walking tour of the area.
We all got together and we created, the East Village Safaris. Celebrate, the freaks. The artists, the activists, the radicals, the outlaws. So I was just telling the story when Giuliani tried to bust Hell's Angels.
And who are you to tell the story? All right, we're not doing nothing wrong. Motorcycle enthusiasts.
That's right. That which gave, the East Village its bohemian character.
Today, he returns to take me on that tour. Come with us as we explore the neighbourhood as it is today.
Beastie Boys used to perform here.
What's going on what?
That's a yuppie restaurant.
And catch up with some old friends.
Amen. Are we going? Are we good? All right. So this is Astor Place, sort of like the gateway to the East Village. Begin East Village safaris at Astor Place, and the focus of the tour is on the artists, activists, and outlaws that make up the character that give the East Village its character. So here we are at Astor Place, and I'm going to talk about John Astor a little bit. How does he qualify? How is he an activist? Well, maybe a little bit in later days in philanthropy. He bought libraries and things like that. Was he an artist? No, he was an outlaw. John Astor started off as a furrier. He was in the fur trapping business. There's actually in the subway station, the Astor Place subway station, the tile downstairs, you'll see beavers, and that's in honor of John Astor. John Astor was an outlaw. He started off with fur trading, and then he became a drug dealer. Basically, he smuggled opium out of China and addicted a whole lot of Chinese people and also a whole lot of Americans. And then from that, he took his opium money and built a real estate empire. And he was one of the wealthiest people in the world, even more wealthy than, I think, the Queen of England. He was worth what would be 100 billion today. So, all right.
And that was mainly from the opium as opposed to mainly from
opium.
The more wholesome
This
trade
is the Alamo by Tony Rosenthal. It used to turn. There we go.
I see people when I'm walking home at work. There's always a few people.
I used to be able to do it by myself, but I'm getting old. This is Cooper Union.
Oh yeah.
Cooper Union is the first building to be built out of railroad ties. Will have an internal steel structure, because Peter Cooper actually built America's first railroad. It was called the Tom Thumb Railroad, and he used railroad ties from that railroad to create the superstructure that building is built around. Many famous people spoke there. Abraham Lincoln gave his Right Makes Mike speech there. Barack Obama has spoken there. Teddy Roosevelt spoke there. Mark Twain spoke there. Emma Goodman spoke there. This is totally brand new here. Like when we originally did the East Village Safaris, we didn't speak about this because it wasn't here.
Can you remember what was there before?
Yeah,
CBS?
there was a one-story building. There was a Starbucks for a long time here. There used to be 3 Starbucks within like a 4-block radius, and we would talk about each one. You know, saying, you know, look at what's happening to our neighborhood. And by the time we got to the 3rd one, we would have our audience skipping along with us, going, Kmart, McDonald's, Starbucks. Oh my! These lampposts were created by Jim Powers. They've been like moved here. They're now like sort of protected. But when he was originally doing them, when I came here in 1983, I actually saw him working on one at Astor Place, and I saw the cops bust him as he was doing it. They actually, you know, they made him stop. They harassed the hell out of him. They gave him a ticket. But now they're protected, and they're all up and down the. There's another one. Throughout the East Village, you'll see these. He also did the mosaic at the UCB Theater and at Two Boots. Oh, yeah. It's all Jim Powers.
And is there a route? Is there a route that they follow around the East Village? These?
No,
or is it just random?
He just randomly started decorating, you know, the neighborhood. But Marky Ramone's band, the Rattlesnakes, used to play Continental all the time.
Oh, really?
This used to be the 5 Spot. In 1962, it moved from around the corner. The 5 Spot was one of New York City's most famous jazz joints. Thelonious Monk, Charlie Parker, Lena Horne, Billie Holiday, they all performed here. Now right over here where it says Sing Sing Karaoke, that is number 7 St. Mark's. That's the building Lenny Bruce used to live in. Also Sylvain from the New York Dolls lived in that building. When we reached this part of the tour, a friend of mine we had implanted would come running across the street, and he had like a crew cut, and he looked like a 1950s American white guy, and he'd come running across the street and he goes, "Do you know who lives here? Do you know who lives here? Lenny Bruce! Lenny Bruce lives here. Oh, his act is unbelievable. He doesn't tell jokes, it's stories that have a point." You know, and he would, you know, and then sometimes the whole street would stop because he was very, very demonstrative. All right, now this big structure here that has the new top on top of it, this old building that's under it, that used to be known as the Dom. It was also called Union, not Union Hall, something.
Electric Circus.
The Electric Circus was there, that's right.
Airplane played up there.
Down
Jefferson
there, actually. And this is where the plastic exploding inevitable was, the Andy Warhol's work with the Velvet Underground. And this was a nightclub for a few years. But before that, it was called the Dom. And before that, it was, I forget the name of it. It was a hall. And in the turn of the century, there was a shootout between 2 Jewish gangster gangs, Dopey Benny Fine and Jack Scirocco. And they shot it out for like 12 hours, you know, firing across the street, and only one person was killed. It was actually a clerk for the New York court, and that then brought all this official attention down on the Jewish gangsters, and the gangs were broken after that event. 30 St. Mark's. This is the building where Abby Hoffman invented the Yippies with Paul Krasner and Jerry Rubin. He had a basement apartment. And in 1968, like New Year's Eve, maybe 69, they came up with the idea of the Yippies, the Youth International Party. And this is where they plotted their stunt, where they went down to Wall Street. Back in the days, the New York Stock Exchange, you could actually go take a tour and visit. So they signed up for a tour, and when they showed up, at first they weren't going to let them in because they had long hair, and they said, "You got long hair, you're hippies, you're going to create trouble." And they go, No, we're Jews." So they said, "Okay, come on in." And so it was Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, Susan Sarandon was also, I think, part of it. Or no, who's the actress that? Candice Bergen, exactly. Candice Bergen was part of it, not Susan Sarandon. It was Candice Bergen, Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, about 10 people, they went up on there was a gallery. And you look over the New York Stock Exchange, they took like hundreds of single dollar bills and mimeographs of $100 bills. So they maybe $300 worth of actual cash money, and they started flinging it onto the trading floor, and trading stopped because everybody was reaching for the money. All right, so that was the first real yippie prank. They basically brought the entire New York Stock Exchange to a halt because the traders were all grasping and fighting each other for single dollar bills.
See, I've only lived here now for 2 years, but even I'm starting to see completely new shops.
Yeah,
open, and
it's burn and churn with the retail here because, well, quite frankly, the internet is changing the way people, buy things.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody goes shopping anymore. Everybody, gets Amazon or whatever. This is Gem Spa. The back photo on the first New York Dolls album features this location.
Mm-hmm. Got old Zoltar at the front there.
It's an East Village legend that the egg cream was invented here, but that's not true.
Oh, really? The egg cream?
It's not true. Yeah. Egg cream has neither egg or cream in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So is that the falseness of it, or is the falseness of it that it is a thing, but it just wasn't founded here?
It wasn't founded here.
Oh, right. Mm-hmm. Was it Gem Spa back then, selling novelty sunglasses
it was still
cigars?
This is another one of the very few places that is still here. Yeah, B&H Dairy and Vegetarian is also still here. Paul's Burger.
I was about Paul's the Burger joint is very famous.
Been around, and it's a great burger. Hard to finish. Second Avenue, we would go down here actually to that Starbucks. That's the one that we would sage because that's the third Starbucks. Also down that street is the Telephone Bar, which before that it was the Telephone Bar. It was a place called Le Metro, and they used to do poetry readings there. And a very important First Amendment ruling came about as a result of that, because New York City used to have the cabaret laws, and we're going to get into that later with the Dance Liberation Front. But in those days, they actually required that things like poetry readings were also under the auspices of the cabaret laws. So the police came in one time because poets were doing some anti-American poetry, maybe even with a burnt flag or whatever, and they busted them. And Allen Ginsberg and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and a few other people decided to fight it. They got some legal representation, and they took it to court, and they got the law changed about poetry. So the poetry is First Amendment. We don't need a license to recite it. You don't need so that portion of the cabaret law was overturned. So here's another one of Jim Power's lampposts. He actually used to live on St. Mark's. There was a little squat called the Cave down the street.
Is it still there?
No, the squat's no longer there, and he doesn't live there anymore either. But you see him, you'll see him every now and then tending to some of these lampposts, and he's got dogs. He's got a couple of dogs.
The Episcopal Church.
First German Methodist Episcopal Church. This whole neighborhood used to be Little Germantown.
Yeah?
They called it. Yeah. It was majority German population up until the sinking of this boat. It was in the East River. It caught fire, and it was a horrific disaster, and it basically destroyed the whole German community. There's the Holiday Cocktail Lounge at 75 St. Mark's. Stefan Luttwak opened it, a famous East Village character. He actually fought in the Battle of Stalingrad. In this building also W.H. Auden used to live, and in the basement was a Russian newspaper at the turn of the century up until the Russian Revolution called Mir Novi, and Leon Trotsky wrote for it and worked here before he became one of the fathers of the Russian Revolution. La Palapa.
And just quickly before we move on to that, so Cocktail Lounge, was the inspiration for a very famous Madonna song.
That's right, the Holiday. Yeah, Holiday by Madonna. She got her inspiration
Wow.
from that. When I first came to the city, I used to hang out here. It was one of the places I could get Stoli rocks for $1.
What's that? What's that?
Stoli vodka on the rocks for $1.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How many of those did you consume? I bet you could have a great night out on $10.
Yeah, 7 or 8, you know. This is the old Theater St. Mark's. Check out the people who are, there's Joan Blondell, Ruby Keeler, Gloria Swanson, Dom DeLuise, Joan Crawford, Myrna Loy. All, you know, have their prints in the cement here. You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown premiered here.
Yeah?
This is where it first premiered.
I can definitely vouch for the likely to be the best hot dog you'll ever eat in your life. Also, it's nice because the novelty is you get served by just a hand.
Yeah.
You hand your money in, all of a sudden a hand just comes out, grabs your
On
money,
East 9th
exchange for a
Street,
hot dog.
real close to Avenue A, there used to be a place where you could get marijuana like that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What,
And
hand goes
It
in?
was called the Candy Store. It had a little sign with a little candy cane on it, and you would put your $5 in the slot, and then the slot would come down, and then the slot would open up, and there'd be your $5 bag of marijuana.
These guys are missing a trick.
Yeah, that was a thing.
Praise,
This
Sonny's.
used to be the St. Mark's Bar and Grill. I forget what it's called now, but this is where the Rolling Stones shot their video, Waiting for a Friend,
Yeah?
and that's the stoop they sat
Oh,
on.
V-Bar, right. Yeah.
This is under St. Mark's Theater.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the few downtown off Broadway spots still that are still viable, where producers with not that much money can actually stage something. But this is Fun City Tattoo. It's now called Big Steve's, but it used to be Jonathan Shaw's. It's the first real tattoo joint since it was. He was actually working under illegally. It started in 1976. John Shaw did actually 2 of my tats, but not here. I actually saw him at his home. But this building next door is the Physical Graffiti building. This is the album cover of Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, this building.
And they've cottoned onto it with physical
Yeah.
graffiti.
Yeah. So this place, Bua, right here, during the blackout of 2005, they had a generator. They were still open. People were hanging out drinking beer. They had ice. But before that, in the 90s, this used to be Chenet. And Chenet is like where Jeff Buckley used to perform. And
So it's a performance-based bar on the one side,
yeah.
performance-based on
It
the
was
other.
it was a hugely influential. It was like what they called the anti-folk scene. And now we have a Starbucks on Avenue A.
That's caused a lot of controversy, right?
Yeah. Oh, also who's inherited St. Mark's, and I think this park is named after him, was former Vice President Tompkins and Governor Tompkins of New York State. Governor Tompkins abolished slavery in New York. So he was an important guy.
And
There used to be a homeless encampment here. When Dinkins came in and closed it down, there was a huge riot, and then they shut the whole park down for a couple of years while they remodeled, and then they put a curfew on the park for midnight. We're going to go around this way. And then there was a huge riot here in '88 where 45 people were injured. The cops taped up their badges. They put electrical tape over their badge numbers and just basically assaulted the shit out of, all the squatters that came to protest.
because the interesting thing about that, it wasn't just squatters that came out to protest. It was civilians and
Yeah.
people who lived here and had just moved here. 'Cause
Yeah.
they still supported the fact that people could
Yeah,
have the right to live
I saw
in this park.
I saw the riot unfold, and I actually split. I left the scene. I said I did not participate.
Mm-hmm.
Die Hard 2 was filmed here. They used that corner of the park over there.
Oh, that's where they're putting the water measurements to.
Die Hard 2, yeah. They put up a phony statue over there, but that
So
was
that would have been John McClane and
it was Samuel L. Jackson. That one, right.
or Bruce Willis, Samuel Jackson, yeah.
Right. this tall building here is known as the Christodora House. In the 60s, there were government, federal offices on the ground floor, and before it was converted into condos for rich people. And this is where Allen Ginsberg led a demonstration for the legalization of marijuana. Right here. After it became condos, Iggy Pop moved in.
Yeah?
Yeah. Avenue B, the CD Avenue B was written here. Yeah, 155, I believe. Charlie Parker lived. But yeah, Charlie Parker, and this is where this is like his final home.
And in terms of activists, anarchists,
he's an
artist. He was
yeah.
He fell with the artist.
Yeah, he was probably the greatest sax player of his generation. He revolutionized jazz. The whole bebop, situation, it comes down to him, Dizzy Gillespie, and Miles Davis. They're the ones. And then you have some lesser lights like Thelonious Monk, who to call him a lesser light is almost sacrilege, but compared to them, my opinion anyway. There's probably people who think I'm completely idiots. Yeah.
So we're talking a bit about Die Hard previously and talking about films set around here. We're now coming up to a great little bar, which is obviously home to several of our favourite movies. Thank you.
Oh, the Horseshoe Bar.
Horseshoe Bar.
Yeah, Vlasics Avenue B Horseshoe Bar. Godfather was shot here. It's a great bar.
Crocodile Dundee, right? This is where he
Yeah.
had a drink with the Italian cab driver.
Handsome Dick Manitoba was the front man for the punk band The Dictators.
Oh yeah.
And now that's his bar. And when we first did this, the very first time I hosted this tour down this street, I was pointing it out and he happened to be in the doorway. And I said, oh look, there's Handsome Dick himself. Wave and say hello. This is the old 6th Street Community Garden.
I was thinking maybe we could actually go in here and do a...
Sure. What's missing is like there was this iconic tower here that was 65 feet tall, built of junk and toys, and it had like teddy bears and things hanging off of it, like a surreal Christmas tree. That's close, but that tower was right here. It went up 65 feet.
And what happened to it?
The city tore it down. The guy who created it passed away. And so they determined it was structurally unsound, but it was a real, it was iconic. On East 2nd Street in Avenue B, there used to be a place called the Gas Station, aka 2B.
So we've got a postcard from the East Village Safari tour, which Rob Pritchard ran as part of the How Festival in 2003 and 2004. So over to you, Rob.
Surf Reality was a performance space that I ran on the Lower East Side from 1993 to 2003. And it was a place I marketed to artists and producers and writers, performing artists, not so much audiences. It was a 65-seat black box theater with a great light and sound package and also videotaping capabilities.
For the past 5 years, this place sort of has been a kind of an asylum. An asylum from the insanity.
And people could come stage their show, their workshop, or workshop something, and then it would be up to them whether they wanted to bring in audiences or not, or industry or whatever. And that was actually a pretty successful approach, because if you can bring in artists, the audiences will follow.
Now, let's take a walk and I'll explain some stuff to you. What historically comes from this area is performance art. Around the corner up here was a place called Surf Reality that come from the legacy of 1970s performance art. Things with liquids, not very funny or entertaining, but made you uncomfortable. Guys like Face Boy, Reverend Jen.
My name is Reverend Jen. I'm a poet, preacher, painter, performer, playwright, art star. I live on the Lower East Side in the world's only Troma Museum with Reverend Jen Jr., a Chihuahua who is also a dog clothes model.
In 1995, I didn't know what I was doing as a kid, you know, so I was just writing about everyday occurrences, which when you look back can be pretty spectacular and weird when, I don't know.
Hey, man.
Good to see you.
Yeah. This is Rob.
Hey, lovely to meet you. How's it going, Faceboy?
Going well, thank
Shane,
you.
that's Jean-Pierre.
Jean-Pierre.
My name is Francis R. Hall, aka Faceboy. I arrived in New York when I was born. I live in Greenwich Village. I was raised there. The nickname Faceboy came from my big brother, John S. Hall, who is known for his band King Missile. They had a hit in the 90s called Detachable Penis that some people recall. The camera person is nodding and smiling. So when I was about 12 years old, he started going, "Faceboy, why does everyone call you Faceboy?" And it pissed me off. I said, "They don't." And eventually they did, because I hated it. When you hate a nickname, it's always going to stick. I've been doing lots of things under that name.
What is this about?
So this is it's a documentary, and it's basically to capture the essence of East Village as it is today, but also kind of paying homage to what it was in the past, and you know, the sort of what built the catalyst for what it is today and how it's changed for the good and the bad.
It was a little different.
Yeah, so I've heard.
I was working in art galleries and writing a lot because honestly, a lot of days you sit around just, you know, doing nothing. So I was writing in my journals a lot. I didn't have money for art supplies. And a buddy of mine said, "Hey, there's an open mic on 2nd and B, and the stuff you're writing is so good, you should go there and perform." And it's run by this guy named Faceboy, who's the younger brother of John S. Hall from King Missile. And we were fans of King Missile.
I was hosting an open mic at a place called Collective Unconscious at 28 Avenue A, or 28 Avenue B, I think it was.
Avenue B.
Avenue B.
Hi, how are you? It's lovely to meet you. That's my irritated eye.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
This is where art went. It seemed like the purest form of art, people doing whatever they wanted, not in a pretentious or precocious manner or anything other than pure self-expression, and I fit right in with the weirdos.
Dan Green burnt it down.
Yeah, that was lost in a fire.
And so it's moved to Surf Reality on Allen Street on the Lower East Side, which I didn't know where that was. I hadn't really been below Houston Street, but I found it, 172 Allen Street.
All right, we're coming up on where surf used to be. You see where it says Bikram Yoga?
Oh yeah.
That was actually my living loft where that flag is now.
Yeah?
Yeah. That window that's open?
I was actually asked to host. There was a woman named Fly was hosting this open mic, and when she pulled out, it started to lose some of its momentum, and they asked me to do it. And I found that I really loved it, so I was looking for a space to continue doing it, and I walked into a few different spaces, but as soon as I walked into Surf Reality, I knew this was the place for me, and it was a great match, and that was in 1995, and we've been working together ever since in some form.
This is the entrance to an Islamic center. When I first moved into this building, this was the entrance to a brothel. It was a Russian brothel. And we didn't catch on to the fact that it was a Russian brothel until we were here maybe 6-8 weeks. And at that time, this loft here, this was our living loft. My wife and I and my daughter Sky. My daughter Sky's room was actually right above this entrance. And when we copped to the fact that this was a brothel down here, I moved her room across the loft because I was afraid disgruntled customers might put caps into the ceiling. That was an actual concern. Now this is Blue Stockings, but this used to actually be 2 spaces. And before it was Blue Stockings Radical Feminist Bookstore, it was a pawn shop and a Coke deli. we knew it was a Coke deli because there was like the goods in the windows had dust on them. And when we were actually moving into this building, we pulled our truck up. I went and got a bunch of Cokes for my friends and stuff, and the guy was like, "You're actually buying Coca-Cola?" You know, he was like, you know, and it was $1 for everything that I put on the table. It said $1. You know, you get out. You know?
That was the money laundering.
Yeah, and so in the first 3 years of being here, the Coke deli was busted 6 times. Usually while a show was going on in progress upstairs. So yeah, we had a brothel, we had cocaine, and we had theater, all in the same building. So it was basically one-stop shopping mall for the urban outlaw. Face Boy's open mic actually has all this like radical heritage to it. Mm-hmm. It's pretty interesting. I didn't know that Fly was doing it first.
Yeah, and it was when I moved to Surf Reality. It was open mic night, but then when I moved to Surf Reality, I called it Face Boy's open mic. I put my name on it because I felt like it was more mine.
And it would just go. It would go. Some nights it would go till 5 a.m. And it was there from 95 until 2003. 8 years.
It was this great thing where you could have stand-up comedy and poetry and dancing and, you know, someone lighting their penis on fire and somebody doing interpretive dance all in one show. It was what the Anti-Slam and Face Boys open mic presented to the world.
Before I was so crudely interrupted, I was just trying to tell you motherfuckers to go out and get 9 to 5 jobs like the rest of the world. Show a little goddamn responsibility to yourself. You with the red hair looks fucking silly. You with the natural goddamn hair. All you people shaving your fucking hair all kinds of weird ways and coloring it left and right, putting tattoos on your body, shaking your ass like you got no fucking self-respect.
We did 4 surf comedy festivals that Face Boy helped me produce and hosted some of the events. Upright Citizens Brigade were part of 2 of them. So they weren't famous yet. Jim Gaffigan wasn't famous in those days, and he's very famous now. He had a show every Friday night, the very first year of our existence. Who else? Mark Maron was a regular.
Christian Finnegan
was a regular.
And Kristen Schaal, who's now starring in Last Man on Earth. Co-starring in that. She's wonderful. I love her. And both Christian and Kristen have credited starting their careers at Surf Reality at my open mic in interviews, which is nice.
Yeah.
I got to perform with the likes of Dave Chappelle, Wanda Sykes, Louis C.K. I wasn't trying to be a comedian, but occasionally they would have performance artists come in and just do wacky stuff, and a great crowd, you know, always capacity crowd.
Kimya Dawson and Andy Green from Moldy Peaches came down and performed all the time.
Michael Portnoy, who is known for Soy Bomb, and
he was famous because he sort of photobombed Dylan on stage at the Grammys. Started doing eccentric dancing next to him, pulled off his shirt, and he had Soy Bomb scrawled all across his chest in black magic marker.
What was the most bizarre thing you can think of? You can take your time on this question.
I doubt you want me to talk about a man putting his penis into his own asshole, because I'll talk about it. with a video of kittens playing in the background. One of the guys who helped run Collective, he had pissed me off, I forget why, but he came on stage in a tiny Speedo and poured peroxide and baking soda down his Speedo so it exploded like a volcano. I've hosted the show now. I'm about to bring it back in April, but I've hosted it for over 20 years, and I've seen so much weird shit. I've seen performance artists do things with vegetables that no one should ever see. I've had to actually close my eyes. I've had to 409 the mic stand several times. how long do you want this documentary to be? Because I could keep going.
Remember when the director of American History X came?
Yeah.
His name is escaping me at the moment.
Norton?
But no, that was the star.
Yeah, that was the star.
But director of Google it, director of American History X came.
Tony, whatever his fucking name is, yeah, that douchebag.
And he was doing a set. Everyone gets 8 minutes, no matter who you are. And the timer goes off. He keeps going. I give him a little bit extra time, and then eventually, you know, I'd say, you know, hey, you know, we really have to get moving here, and he screams, "I'm not finished!" And so I put on some music. I take off his mic. I approach him more directly, and so he does eventually stop. I had asked him to leave, but he didn't leave, and I wasn't going to try to force him out because now he was being calm. He stayed the entire night. At about 3 a.m. when it was all over, he goes, 8 minutes. I get it.
That guy showed up and he thought because he was movie famous that we'd put up with nonsense, but no, you just can't be rude to people. There's a real niceness actually in the Art Star community, for sure. And he was rude, and so everyone started, I think I remember, but I probably was like 10 Budweisers in, but us screaming for him to get out. Like, we don't care if you're famous, get out.
But people who were not famous then, but are now, Amy Poehler with Upright Citizens Brigade. The very first show that Upright Citizens Brigade did in New York City was at Surf Reality. It was so sold out, I didn't get to see it. I was at the buzzer ran one more time, and I buzzed them in. I went, "Here's your spot," and I left the theater.
Where did you go?
I went back into the living loft, into my home.
Oh, right.
I had a very short commute. So this is the entrance to Bikram Yoga. This used to be the entrance to Surf Reality, and we used to have this cast iron sort of avant sculpture. You know, it was this brutal, like the gas station, sort of like how the gas station was done. It was this huge, like really heavy iron gate, you know, that you had to pull open. After I lost my lease and I moved out, people known as art stars who were part of the scene, 6 of them stole the gate.
Wow, do you know where it exists now?
It ended up in the lot where Collective Unconscious was. When they tore down Collective Unconscious, it ended up in that lot. That's the last I heard of it.
Okay.
When I first looked at the space, I was going to take it over as a sublet. And when I rang the buzzer, the guy came down and answered the door with a gun in his hand. And I goes, "Oh, what's up?" And he goes, "Well, I got to be really careful. The guy I was going to sublet the space from was a marijuana dealer. And just a few weeks earlier, down the street on Stanton, another marijuana dealer had been murdered. And the suspects actually were rogue cops. So he was very paranoid, and that's why he was moving out, because he was afraid he was going to be next. Yeah, so at night, when the first couple of years living here, you would hear gunfire in the neighborhood. Back in 95, 96, the heyday of the Lower East Side theater scene, there was Toto Canada, there was House of Candles, there was Surf Reality, there was Collective Unconscious, there was Pianos, and there was the Present Theater Company.
And now there's none.
All of them are gone.
But what about UCB Theatre?
UCB Theatre came way after.
Oh, okay.
And that's actually next to Two Boots. It used to be the Two Boots Theater. Because Two Boots is actually started by filmmakers. Documentary filmmaker Phil Hartman. Where do you want to go sit down?
Let's go.
Maybe we should just go to Two Boots.
And sit in Two Boots?
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay.
Perfect. They won't have an issue. They might have an issue though with the actual. I mean.
Nah, I think they'll be fine. They're filmmakers.
Yeah.
I think it's only fitting that I should be eating a slice of pizza named after a character invented by
Kaufman.
Andy Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
Oh look, they have beer here too. It's too early for beer.
Yeah, I try to wait until 7 p.m. to drink, and only drink on days with the letter A in them.
What sparked the end of that reality?
Gentrification. It was, hyper real estate capitalism. And now we have a Starbucks on Avenue A.
That's caused a lot of controversy, right?
Yeah. This whole idea of corporate capitalism on Main Street is, it's so anti-East Village. That we have McDonald's, that we have, Baskin Robbins. And we used to have like nothing but mom and pop here. But New York real estate is such that mom and pop can't afford to rent anymore. You need deep corporate pockets. When I first took over as a sublet in '93, my rent was $2,300. 5 years later, the landlord asked me for $3,500. 5 years after that, they wanted over $8,000, plus escalators every year, plus property taxes, plus water bill. So the whole thing really would have come to more like $10,000 a month.
For better or for worse, it was either 96 or 97, and we were featured in the front page of the Arts and Leisure section of the New York Times Sunday edition. So that was huge. They wrote about a few open mics, and they really concentrated a lot on mine. And after that, the people that were coming to my open mic before that were performance artists, poets, just underground performers, musicians, very colorful, diverse, fun group of people. So after that article, I didn't have to worry about promotion anymore, but it also brought in a lot of just your straight white male stand-up comics trying to be Jerry Seinfeld or something like that. And it wasn't really, I was glad to not have to worry about promotion anymore, but that just didn't really interest me, the whole setup, punchline, callback. It's not really the kind of thing that I had much interest in.
So there were two camps, the performance artists, and then there were the comics who were infringing on their space. Surf reality I would do occasionally, but there was an attitude. They were like, those are just a bunch of stand-ups trying to do what we do.
But I remember we also did the Toyota Comedy Festival, and I really didn't want any corporate sponsorship or anything like that. So I said, look, I will do it, I'll be part of it, but I have to be able to wipe my ass with the Toyota Comedy Festival banner. And so they agreed for some reason.
They agreed? Did you do it?
Yeah, of course I did.
On stage?
Yes. But there were a number of them who were fantastic and have gone on to have great careers.
Janine Garofalo and I have collaborated on a lot of things since then, and I probably wouldn't have gotten to meet her if it hadn't been for the insurgence of comedians in the Lower East Side.
Do you remember back in the day when we were doing Luna, and there was like the whole surf contingent was very upset that regular stand-up comedians had now crossed the line of Houston Street?
Yeah, well, I wasn't that upset as long as you guys stayed above Stanton Street.
So it was, for better or for worse. And it also did start, in my mind, some of the gentrification that...
I think actually what started the gentrification was the Fringe Festival, honestly. We were one of the 6 Lower East Side seed theaters, and Surf Reality was part of the first 2 festivals, 97 and 98. We had these 6 theaters attracting thousands and thousands and thousands of people into the neighborhood over a 2-week period, people who'd never been to the neighborhood before, and the realtors saw that all of a sudden, oh yeah, white people come here too. And, because within 3 years of the first Fringe Festival, theaters were starting to shut down. We couldn't afford our own neighborhood anymore. We kind of cut our own throat with that festival. That was part of it. the press was part of it. But even before the New York Times did basically what the New York Times was reporting on was the Lower East Side comedy scene. And they mentioned Face Boy's open mic, but they also mentioned like what was happening around the corner on Ludlow Street at the Rebar show. And they also mentioned some of the other shows that are happening at Surf too. And we were known from the very beginning as being a spot for comedy, but we were known for what they used to call alternative comedy, and that phrasing used to actually make us a little bit crazy, because we thought they were sort of like glomming onto alternative rock, because in the 90s alternative rock was the phrase, you know. And then we were going, but what do you mean alternative comedy? Does that mean it's not funny? We insist that it be funny, you know. What we were talking about, what we were sort of promoting was a more performance art approach to comedy, like Andy Kaufman. He was like one of our pull stars, actually. On East 2nd Street and Avenue B, there used to be a place called the Gas Station, aka 2B. Gigi Allen's very last performance was at the gas station at 2B.
So tell me a bit about Gigi Allen, because I've only really come across him since moving here and hanging out in East Village and hearing the stories.
Yeah, he was a mess, you know. basically he was a lunatic, and Iggy Pop's act of crawling in glass, you know, and it was that times 10. You know, he was kind of like the Charles Bukowski of punk rock, you know, where everything was just, you know, shit, and pus and cum and puke. You know, those were his. You know, yeah. He was the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse all rolled into one. He would defecate on stage and then fling shit at people.
And this was before the box, right?
Yeah.
So was that like? Do you reckon that was like an inspiration for the box? Because that's all that sort of stuff, isn't it?
I don't know. I've never been to the box actually, although many of my friends have performed there.
Oh, fuck that place. I don't personally know whatever Hammerstein owns it, but you know, that comes from privilege and money, and it focuses mostly on burlesque. And many of my friends are burlesque artists, but I've thought that keeping something only burlesque is somewhat regressive, and that the fun that we had doing like alien historical theater, burlesque, nonsense, comedy, everything at once, that is avant-garde. Having, you know, focusing solely on, I don't know, pretty women taking their clothes off for money, I don't know, regressive. And there's nothing wrong with taking your clothes off for money. I've done it plenty of times. I just think that there could be better things.
Right over here used to be Save the Robots. Save the Robots.
Old school LES theaters, you could have less than $5 to your name. Get a $1 Budweiser, show up to a theater, and for $3 see probably the craziest show you're ever going to see in your life. I knocked over the Box's Christmas tree on their opening night, and I'm proud of that.
The idea for East Village Safaris came from Sarah Delphine, who was my girlfriend at the time, and we were sort of like talking about, well, what does Surf Reality do next? In 1993, when we first opened, Surf, the neighborhood was terrible. It was a you know, almost a ghetto. We could hear gunfire at night. Anyway, fast forward 10 years, and the whole place is gentrified, and my rent is tripled, and Surf Reality can no longer afford to be.
And this is 2003.
2003, and so that was the first Howl Festival, also, where they where the East Village organizers of the Howl Festival were trying to commemorate, you know, and preserve and celebrate a rapidly diminishing scene, a rapidly diminishing culture. And so Sarah said, well, what if we did, like, you know, a walking tour pointing out, you know, all the things that make this neighborhood great, you know? And I was like, yeah, that's a great way for so Surf Reality, with Rev Jen and Sarah, Master Lee, and my friend Tom Tenney, Toxic Pop, we all got together and we created, the East Village Safaris. And the idea was to, sort of celebrate, the freaks, the artists, the activists, the radicals, the outlaws, that which gave, the East Village its bohemian character.
One of the things that is tragic is that in 1998 there were 7 storefront theaters on the Lower East Side. Now there are 0.
We had just lost Surf Reality and 5 other theaters in the neighborhood, all gone. Toto Canada,
House of Candles,
The Collective Unconscious,
Piano Shop,
House of Borax,
Surf Reality.
All those theaters were gone. And so we were seeing the whole, the culture change, right before our very eyes through gentrification.
Right now, the Lower East Side is catering to money, to a disgusting, repellent degree. Am I bitter enough?
No, that's fantastic.
Gentrification, basically, a lot of it had to do with, corporate interests coming in and basically taking over Main Street. When we get down to the Lower East Side near where Surf is, you'll see a lot of tall buildings. Weren't there in '93. Those buildings weren't there. I used to call it War of the Worlds, because it's like these huge machines are all of a sudden planted on the block, and all these aliens are coming out onto the street, and they're basically taking over everything and changing the very nature of our neighborhood. And they won. It's gone. Here's the old Whole Foods. This is the building I called the Death Star when they were building it. This is also an Avalon construction.
And it's not the Lower East Side. You couldn't shoot a Law and Order there anymore because it's just high rises. It doesn't look like the Lower East Side. It looks like Stamford, Connecticut.
See, this is like the Upper East Side coming down to the to the Lower East Side.
That's awful building, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looks like an old office block from like the 80s.
The real estate concern that builds these buildings, they're all across the country. I've seen the same thing in San Francisco. They're called Avalon. And they build these, they basically, do this, it's almost like Lego, They do these cookie cutter, buildings. Now it seems like the neighborhood is more of a Somalia cum. How do you say that word?
Somalia. Somalia?
Like the Disney version.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're about to go off now. We're going to go to one of the big stop-offs on the East Village Safari Tour 2003, which was the Hells Angels headquarters.
Which is
one block up the road.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So when in celebrating artists, activists, and outlaws, some people were all 3. Like Allen Ginsberg was all 3.
Mm-hmm.
He was an artist, he was an activist, and he was an outlaw. He was born an outlaw because he was gay.
Ginsberg.
Allen Ginsberg, yeah, very gay. And then you have Hell's Angels, who are like on the outlaw side, but some of those guys are also artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the perception of those guys in the village?
Yeah, well, there's allegations that they were heavy into, the methamphetamine trade.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to describe themselves probably as private contractors. They all do what they do on their own, not under the banner of Hell's Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And that the Hell's Angels is really just a social group. They're famous for providing security for events.
Mm-hmm.
That did not go over well at Altamont, but that's something that they used to do.
Is that with the Rolling Stones?
Yeah. Hell's Angels, murdered a concert goer at Altamont. This building here, I used to actually live in this apartment right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What years?
I was here from 1990 to 1993. And my super committed suicide by jumping out of his 6th floor window, and he landed right outside our windows. It was in broad daylight, so it happened, everybody, instantaneously everybody knew.
Do you still get noticed when you walk around here? Like, do people sort of see you and go, "Oh, there's Rob that he used to do"?
Nah, but actually, the last time that happened was I was being interviewed by the Gotham for Radio Free Brooklyn, and I was in front of Radio Free Brooklyn on DeKalb Avenue in Bushwick, not my neighborhood at all. And as I'm being interviewed by the Gothamist, a truck stops, and the guy looks out the window at me and goes, "Hey, you're Rob Pritchard."
Yeah?
Yeah, he knew me from Surf Reality.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So here we are at Hell's Angels Motorcycle Club. Their original club was across the street. And you can see they're all parked here. That's Steve Bonge's pickup truck. He was the vice president of Hell's Angels for the longest time. He's also an official photographer for them. The sponsors, or one of the creators of the New York International Tattoo Convention. And I actually entered into that contest the very first year that it existed, and won first place for my back.
Right.
And he took the photo that then appeared in like all the tattoo magazines for that.
And what year was that?
This is like 1998.
Wow.
He took the photo, and I'm also in his book. He has like a various books of tattoo art, and my back piece is in his book. But the Hell's Angels New York Club has, I think they started in the 60s. Since 1969, right there it says on the thing, established 1969, and this is their clubhouse. And during the Giuliani administration, the local precinct, the 9th precinct, got a complaint from this New Jersey motorcyclist that Hell's Angels had beaten him up and stolen his motorcycle. So word quickly filtered to the mayor's office that there was a complaint against him, because the mayor had always had it in for Hell's Angels. He was actually part of a thing a few years earlier where he tried to do a sting, and they confiscated some Hell's Angels jackets, and there's a picture of Giuliani actually, I think, wearing one. So what they did was they got warrants to search the first floor of this clubhouse. And so they closed off the street. With the fire department closed off the street, there was a helicopter. There was probably 50 cops, and like they came in like all like gung-ho gangbusters, SWAT team. They come in, they execute their warrant, and they're videotaping themselves as they're doing it. So they're videotaping as they're searching, and they have a warrant for the first floor to look for this motorcycle, and the search team then goes up to the second floor, and they're videotaping the search of the second floor, which they do not have a warrant for. So they find a helmet. I'm not sure if any arrests were made, but the next day, Ron Kuby, who was a protege of William Kunstler, the famous ACLU civil rights attorney, Ron Kuby, also very famous now for being a civil rights attorney, he's their attorney. And he gets he demands, to look at their warrant. He wants to look at their evidence. He wants to look at everything they have. And sure enough, he sees the video. He gets a copy of the videotape of them going up to the second floor. Long story short, New York City pays off Hell's Angels over $250,000.
Because the warrant didn't cover the going up to the second floor.
Because they did not cover going up to the second floor. So all the helicopters and the fire trucks and the SWAT team, waste of money. Hell's Angels wins in court.
What are we doing?
We're just called East Village Safaris. We're talking about the local flavor.
It's East Village Safari.
So I was just telling the story when Giuliani tried to bust Hell's Angels.
And who are you to tell the story?
My name is Rob Pritchard. I've been a part of this neighborhood since '83.
Only good stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
Only good stuff, sir.
All right, he's done?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Can I grab that back? That's the only one we had.
Back? I can't have it.
It's an artifact from 2003.
Oh, it's an artifact.
Yeah.
Oh, so what are you doing? Like a TV show or something?
No.
Like these reality shows?
It's like we wanted to do like a kind of a web series about like characters of the East Village.
Oh, what characters here? That's for sure.
Yeah.
I was living down the street when they blocked off you know, when they blocked off the street with the fire trucks and they had the helicopter in the air.
That was only a couple years ago.
No, that was like
a few years before that, and a few years before that, every couple of years.
No, I'm talking about.
really?
I'm talking about the time they were looking for that New Jersey guy's motorcycle, and then they came in with a videotape and went up to the second floor, even though they had a warrant for the first floor, and
we won the lawsuit.
Yeah, $250,000.
There was no motorcycle in here. There was no stolen bike, and they had no warrant.
And that. Not for the second floor, they didn't.
We're not doing nothing wrong. Motorcycle enthusiasts.
That's right. $250,000 richer.
Cheers, man. But it wouldn't have been the same without a.
Same thing happened when I did it the last time.
Yeah. I was about to say that's happened. So what happened last time you were giving a tour?
They watched me, actually. They heard the whole story, and then they went, okay, you can tell that story.
Oh, really? A little bit like them. As soon as he knew it was good news, he kind of, he let us be.
This is the Catholic Workers Building. Huge activist community came out of here. Dorothy Day was part of this.
What is it? Is it a block of flats, apartment block, or?
No, they were a Catholic charity. They did a soup kitchen. They also had a homeless facility. Dorothy Day was a very famous Catholic activist in the 30s and 40s. She was a contemporary of Emma Goldman. Here's the old Bowery Electric, which is a great venue. This is sort of like this generation's CBGB's.
Oh, really?
Is the Bowery Electric. A lot of punk rock still. You still have like a real strong post-rock sound happening, but there's also like a lot of electronica, experimental.
Frozen margaritas for $5. You can't go wrong on that, can you?
Yeah. So here's John Varvatos. This used to be CBGB's. And all the records we used to listen to, they now sell. And the used clothes from the time, you can get like a $5,000 jacket, $400 sneakers. Mm-hmm. You can even get an old 80s stereo system, Advent speakers, Marantz amps. They kept the original bathroom from CB's in here.
Oh, really?
So if you want to, buy some clothes, they'll let you use the restroom.
Restrooms for customers only.
And it's probably, but it's all, they have the original CBGB's bathroom. Look, they said it's preserved a part of the wall with all the stickers.
Uh-huh.
See the under glass to that wall there?
I mean,
all the stickers.
At least they've done a half decent job of keeping some of its look and feel, right?
It's a bit of a museum to CB's.
Mm.
We can go around the corner and you see the old back alley where they used, where in between sets the musicians would, come hang out, smoke cigarettes.
Oh, look, even Chase Bank is paying homage to CBGB's.
Right? Yeah.
I mean,
there's
in their own
Ramones
weird way.
In front of it. The original Ramones.
That's obviously the original exterior.
Yeah. This is the back of the old CBGB's.
I bet some famous people smoked some famous cigarettes in this alleyway.
Probably did some famous lines of cocaine off of some famous breasts. I want to show you 50 East 1st Street. Emma Goldman actually used to live here. There used to be an anarchist bar on either side of the step.
No way.
Where she hung out. Her lover, I forget his name, ran it.
What, a bar that you'd go down there and you'd go in?
Yeah.
Or was it through this door?
Not sure exactly, but there was a bar. So yeah, see these high rises? See all these tall buildings?
Uh-huh.
When I moved into this neighborhood in '93, into Surf, none of them were here. Not one of them.
And
everything was like 5-story building max.
So Cat's Deli is across the road. Apparently that's under trouble, right? That's going to be gone, right? To make way for
they own their own building. They own their space. Cat's is underneath that huge construction right there.
So Cat's is here to stay, do you reckon?
Yeah. Cat's ain't going anywhere. They bought their building back in the day.
Oh, nice.
Another great Lower East Side institution. You see the line out the door? That's Russ and Daughter's Appetizers. They have the best smoked salmon in the city. Lox, they got herring and sour cream sauce. Latkes. They actually have a restaurant version now too down on Orchard Street where you can sit down and they'll serve you. This is hilarious. That is hilarious. Hugs. It's true. In 1997, Rudolph Giuliani established what he called the Nightlife Task Force, and he started enforcing an old law called the Cabaret Law.
I was out getting coffee or tea from the bodega on Allen Street, and I run into Robert Pritchard, and he says, "You're not even going to believe this, Rev."
They closed down Baby Jupiter, which was a place I was invested in for dancing.
And I said, "What?" Like, that was so Kafkaesque. I didn't know about the cabaret laws. And he said, "Yeah, there's this law that was created, I guess, in 1929, I want to say. I don't know the exact year.
1927 law.
26.
26. And I said, that's sick. Like, and it was the year I think the Yankees had just clinched the World Series, or whatever it is that they do in baseball. And I was like, that's so awful, because of course everyone wants to dance and celebrate.
The city required a license for any venue that allowed more than 3 musicians on stage, dancing, sold alcohol or food, had any kind of live performance, spoken word or music or theater, and so they had special fire law requirements. They required every worker in that venue, including the cook, the dishwasher, the performer, the ticket taker. Everybody had to be licensed. And basically the reason for this was 1920s jazz was a huge part of the culture. White women were going uptown to dance, and black men were making money, and that was a problem.
It was a way to keep African American businesses out of business so that white and black people would not be dancing together to this crazy music called jazz.
In the 20s, it was the African American owned clubs that didn't get the licenses. People were afraid of interracial dancing, they didn't like it. There was...
The Cotton Club had a license, but then again, they didn't have black patrons. The Cotton Club in Harlem only served white people. So they created the cabaret laws to keep the white women out of the clubs and to make sure that the white people controlled the money and the political power that came from that money.
The roots of how it came back into being in the 90s are actually the Happy Land fire, like, total horrific tragedy.
The following is a special report from the Channel 5 newsroom.
I'm Lynn Brown. We have an update for you now on that terrible fire in the Bronx. Overnight, 87 people were killed when someone set fire to the Happy Land Social Club in the East Tremont section of the Bronx.
And all the bodies have been removed from the Happy Land Social Club behind me. We understand 30 victims have been identified.
The prosecutors wanted to prosecute the arsonist and the illegal club owners to the maximum extent of the law. So they brought up every old law that no one had paid any attention to in so many years, and that was under the Dinkins administration. And, they should have prosecuted them to the maximum extent of the law. Giuliani dusted it off, like, to make money off of small business, and it's so fucked up, because for any bar to operate, it has to meet certain safety codes. It has nothing to do with dancing.
And we'd see these signs popping up in the bars, no dancing. It's like, what? Are you serious? It was ridiculous.
What, are we all supposed to sit perfectly still next to a fire exit?
Also, like, when does it become dance? You know, what if it's like 5 people just sort of swaying, you know, because the live band is, you know, at what point, you know, when a foot gets lifted or an arm moves a certain way, when does it become dance? Define it. Yeah, define it. You know, it's incredibly myopic.
So they're using it pretty much just as a free range to close down venues.
Yeah.
So, Robert, Reverend Jen, and myself formed the Dance Liberation Front.
I said, we got to do something. And he knew that I was an activist for anything I thought was an outrageously stupid law. And is that we ought to form some sort of coalition, like a dance liberation front. And I said, yeah, we ought to form liberated dance zones.
We desperately need your help in spreading the word about our newly formed organization, the Dance Liberation Front.
The DLF! The DLF!
We are a group of Lower East Side residents who have come together in the face of adversity to protest the absurdity of the money-grubbing cabaret laws. We were forced to commit ourselves to the cause after bars in our neighborhood were temporarily closed down because their patrons decided to get a groove on!
People want to dance! Come on!
We have sort of pretended as the Dance Liberation Front that we were like a faux terrorist organization. Like we had our list of unnegotiable demands, and we would show up with bandanas, you know, like covering our faces like Sandinistas. And I actually my Dance Liberation Front name was Osama bin Travolta. But then after 9/11, no more Osama bin Travolta.
I think I was Comrade Get Down.
Yeah, and then there was Shake Your Booty or something like that, or Yasser something, Arafat, the Rev, do something with his name. But anyway.
That weekend, me and Face and Britch and Liam McEnany, I went to an Army-Navy store and I got those like really scary ski masks. I mean, this would never fly. We would all been plunged with a million bullets if we tried to do it in this day and age. But we got those ski masks, and Pritchard and I had written a manifesto, and we go out and we dance.
This is a communique from your local Dance Liberation Front. The mayor says New Yorkers must have a license to permit dancing.
The DLF says license. We don't need no stinking license.
You thought you were safe. You thought wrong. Who has the right to decide what and what is not dancing? We owe it to ourselves to not take this lying down. If we allow the Giuliani administration to infringe upon our right to dance, what's next? No kissing, no holding hands, no touching, no laughing, talking, or smiling.
Black people will dance. White people will try to dance. Chinese people will get down. Spanish people will do the mambo. Ladies and gentlemen, we will be one nation under a groove.
Mr. Mayor, we have not yet begun to wiggle.
After that, we went up to where Footloose, the musical, was happening, and we danced outside of it, creating a liberated dance zone, and then some DLF commandos tried to dance inside. Yeah, so cops came, but the cops thought we were funny, you know, so we never ever had a problem with cops. And like, you know, life's too busy to get arrested and spend a night in jail, so it was always good to be on good terms with them. And they were happy to get overtime.
We did a giant conga line. This was our first one, a conga line.
On Elvis's birthday.
Yes.
In January of '98.
The Footloose thing didn't do anything. The dance party on Rivington and Stanton didn't do anything. We got to do something that's going to get the attention of the media. An age-old law is being dragged up to torture small businesses, then you got to do something. If no one's paying attention, the government breaks laws. That's something I know from history, being a historian.
When we showed up for our first dance protest, there was a whole contingency of cops there. And so it was decided I would talk to the cops because I'm just good at talking to cops for some reason. So I came up to them and they asked, do we have a permit? And I said, no, we don't. And they said, well, what are you guys intending to do? And we said, we're going to do a conga line up Avenue A. And they said, well, that works fine. Because when you don't have a permit, you can still protest, but you can only take up 50% of the sidewalk. So a conga line.
Single file.
Single file. And so they wound up, somebody had called us out for the cops to, stop it. They wound up leading it and stopping traffic for us. And
so we decided to try to break the Guinness Book World of Records for the world's longest conga line. I think New York Post said there were 700 of us.
And it got bigger and bigger on its own organically. We started off with maybe 15 people on the corner of Houston and Avenue A. By the time we got to Tompkins Square Park, there were 600 people. The conga line was 5 blocks long.
We're going to pump the music, and I think we should just start doing a procession down the street. Do you bring any kind of facial coverage?
Me? I got sunglasses.
All right, there you go.
I am here for dancing liberation, what you call front.
We would approach it with humor. The kind of protests we did, for example, we surrounded City Hall and did the hokey pokey.
And with the Dance Liberation Front, we did a hokey pokey circle in City Hall to protest the capital laws.
What do we want? Dancing! When do we want it? Now!
Dancing!
When do we want it?
Now!
We're just gonna definitely
does anyone have
give the mob instruction.
Hi, we're helping.
Hokey pokey circle around City Hall.
All right, folks, we're just about ready to go. We're getting ready to go.
How do you organize that?
It was mostly word of mouth. We'd make flyers also and posters that we'd hang up around the neighborhood and stuff like that, we'd leave flyers in the different businesses around here.
What's illegal?
Dancing in a lot of clubs and bars around New York. It's an old law in the books. Giuliani is using to close down certain bars, cabarets, clubs, and so we're doing a hokey pokey circle around City Hall and protesting. For the Dance Liberation Front, it's like more than 3 people dance at the same time. They're undercover dance police going around, and in a half hour, yeah. And grab one of those.
There's a bunch of people. I was dressed as Doo-Doo, the 5th Teletubby. And I was carrying a giant American flag.
Take back the right to move your body.
Inconvenience. It can cost other people money. So I understand the need for some sort of.
Take back the right to move your body.
So what's the structure? In other words, some structure for your body. But they can't stop it.
In the most fun I had after that was saying I was 1/3 of a beautiful person.
The 3 of us, Rev Jen, Faceboy, and I, collectively were one of the 50 most beautiful people in New York City because of the Dance Liberation Front.
Mm-hmm. I don't remember what year.
It was like 98, maybe,
that sounds
99.
That sounds about right.
98.
And as a result, I definitely got a lot of butt stuff.
A lot of what fun?
Butt
stuff.
He said butt stuff. Faceboy's bisexual.
Yes.
It's going to bring that up at some point.
Well, it's out.
Now it's out there. Faceboy got a lot of dates.
That night of the party for the most beautiful people, so stupid. Tom Tenney, you should also talk to, who was a big part of the DLF, who helped organize stuff and things. I brought him as my platonic date. We stole the velvet ropes. We didn't like how pretentious it was. And so I said, we gotta steal those velvet ropes. We need them for collective unconscious. Actually, I've been considered one of the most beautiful people in America, kid. I'd rather be a gold Olympian.
Our final action was in Washington Square Park. It was a swing dance party. Norman Siegel spoke at it, and it happened the very same day that we started bombing Afghanistan after 9/11. It was in 2003, and we called it New York Swings Back. And we did a big swing dance event, and Norman Siegel spoke at that one too. But that was our last big public action.
Norman Siegel from the New York Civil Liberties Union. I'm here first to make sure that their First Amendment rights are respected and protected. And second, I support their call for more freedom in New York City, especially with regard to expression. Dance is expressive activity, and the city should not be telling people that they can't dance in clubs.
Then it got to a point where I was like giving out flyers all the time, just trying to get people to come to our ridiculous events. It's exhausting when you want to work on your own art and things like that, that you don't have time. You're not a lawyer, you don't know the... So we went to the ACLU, and Norman Siegel picked us up as you know, not our client, like we weren't his clients because we had no money, but he gave us advice and he said, you guys just keep doing what you're gonna do. And you have my number in case you get arrested.
People need to creatively and lawfully fight back for freedom. And that's what these people here are doing. And that's why we're here to support them.
In 2005, Norman Siegel took a case to the New York State Court of Appeals challenging the cabaret law against dancing, and he lost. He lost the case in court. New York State Court of Appeals determined that social dancing is actually a commercial activity that can be licensed and regulated.
I mean, it's sad that in supposedly the greatest free city in the world, we have this controversy raging. But
I got asked by him to speak on behalf of dancers at New York University Law School. I said something that Pritchard had said to me that I thought was like the ultimate anthem of the DLF, you know, life, liberty, justice, and the pursuit of happiness. And what is not happiness if not dancing? The crowd exploded. And Norman goes, well, I only brought up the Constitution. You brought up the Declaration of Independence. He's like, you won. I think it was quoted on the front page of the New York Times the next day. So,
the law's finally being repealed, and there's an organization
called the Dance Liberation Network.
Yeah, which claims they don't know about us.
Well, they know about us now.
Yeah, they do. So they're trying to take the credit for it.
Well, they get the credit because they did it actually, 20 years later.
All right, we're going to do some grassroots democracy. Everyone ready for a little grassroots democracy? Is it time to repeal the cabaret law?
We won in the end. It only took us almost 2 decades, but we won. The day I was evicted was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I had 3 weeks to go in court, but they broke down my door. I was in the shower, buck naked, and I thought I was being burglarized or something. And I threw a towel on, jumped out of the shower, and there they are saying, you have 3 minutes to leave. And I had Reverend Jen Jr., my beloved Chihuahua, and my cat, Tenny, and I said, well, I gotta get the pets, safely out of here. And they said, you can just leave the cat. I said, absolutely no way. Like, I'd go to jail for that. Home. They think it's okay to just displace you from your home. It's not. I spent years painting every surface, making it beautiful, making it someplace that people love to go to.
We're going up to Reverend Jen's house. We have to be polite. She's a princess of fairyland.
I had a couple friends homeless living on the subway. Oh, come crash on the couch. At a couch-a-thon so I could get a couch so people could crash on it. It's not the same warm, welcoming environment. I ran to housing court, but there's nothing I could do.
Where do you live now?
Sheepshead Bay.
Right.
But there's no such thing as the Lower East Side anymore. The Lower East Side is a state of mind. It is associated with a bohemian, somewhat socialist lifestyle, and it does not belong amongst $1.5 billion condominiums. It's right here. It's in your heart. So come move to Coney Island, Sheepshead Bay, where all of us poor bohemian mofos have to live now. And let's create an art city outside of the Lower East Side.
So Radio Free Brooklyn is actually a response to gentrification. Because we can't afford the real estate anymore, we created a virtual community. A lot of the producers at Surf Reality, a lot of the people who used to perform and produce there, now have radio shows on Radio Free Brooklyn. Faceboy's one of them.